Hey, it's great to be with you again. My name is Jeff Fuller. You certainly can find all things interviews at J Fuller Interviews on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And I have a special show segment for you today. It's called Teammates, and we're just going to highlight some teammates that played at Johnson State together. But one is a native son from Spalding High School, Bryan Hickey. Bryan, it's good to see you. I'm going to start right there. Spalding High School, when did your love of basketball begin?
Oh man, my love of basketball probably started my junior year of high school. I was a big baseball guy growing up. My dad loved baseball. Always going to Lake Monster games. Everything to do with baseball around Vermont. And then junior year really hit. I had a coach in 8th grade, Rusty Balson-Giacomo, who told me that you're a great baseball player, but you really should start focusing on basketball. I think that's really where your passion's at. And junior year, I ended up talking to Rusty Balson-Giacomo again, and he just brought it up again that, you really could go somewhere with the game of basketball, and you should start focusing on that. So that's really when I started to do plyometrics and really starting to do individual workouts that were given to me in high school. And then my senior year, I ended up starting to get recruited by Mike Osborne, and my whole life changed.
So, Bryan, you are slightly over 5'7", I'd say. When did you figure out you could jump?
I could jump. I started touching rim my freshman year of high school, and we were in the middle of baseball practice. And somebody in baseball practice ended up saying, "Hey, can you dunk a baseball? I know you can touch a rim, but can you dunk a baseball?" And I went up and I dunked a baseball, and the rest is history, I guess.
And then, Pat, I want to bring you up, and I should state that you're a native son as well, going to high school in Danville. Was basketball your first love?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to grow up with both my parents involved in the game. Both were high school coaches at Danville High School. So right from the start, was in the gym during a lot of my mom's practices during my elementary years. So definitely had a great experience just growing up around the game, and also just kind of being able to learn from a lot of the players that she had.
Now, all three of you guys are coaching. Pat, when did you realize that you wanted to coach? Is that something you always wanted to do, or did it just kind of come to you in a different fashion?
I definitely think that my parents were a big contributor to that, watching them and kind of the mentorship they've had with their players over the years. But I would also say something that sticks out was when I tore my ACL in college at Johnson. These guys remember that well, that I had to find a different way to try to be involved with the team. And Coach Osborne was great at kind of helping me through that time, as well as these two guys here. So that experience of kind of trying to have an impact in a different way kind of also kind of reconfirmed what I wanted to do in coaching.
Patrick, what year was that you blew out your knee?
Oh, that would have been going into my junior year. So we're talking 2013.
Okay, going back a little ways. Now, Greg, you are slightly under 6 feet. You come from Philadelphia. What is it about Johnson that brought you up this way?
So when I came up on my visit, it was the brotherhood that they presented to me when I came up. I came up with Josh Reed and Ron Adrian, and we bonded really like instantly as soon as we got here. And then having Pat Hickey, Mike Osborne, and also when I came up, Rob Key was around, Ian Pass, I know. So those guys, like, it was really a brotherhood. And I had Andy Bassano, who was my roommate, and we were from the same neighborhood. So that kind of helped it out to get me on out here.
So, Greg, how did you find out about Johnson? Who was the first to reach out to you about that?
Chuck Harper. I went to high school with Chuck Harper. I was actually graduating from Fells High School, heading to Holy Family University, and then a lot of stuff happened there. And then literally like in like end of July, Chuck Harper mom had saw me, and she had told me about Johnson. So I took a year off and then came to Johnson the next year.
Now, do any of you guys have any siblings, older siblings, younger? Raise your hand. Who has siblings? All right. So, Greg, where do you fall? Are you the oldest, youngest?
Second to the last.
All right. Did that help you just get that grit having older siblings?
Yeah, so I had a brother, and then I had my brother best friend. So I had like two older brothers in a sense, and playing with them every day. They didn't take it easy at all. So like that kind of gave me a different perspective of the game. They were a little more taller and athletic, but the heart and the grit, I think I had more of that and the talent.
Patrick, same question for you.
Yeah, I have a younger brother who actually currently works at NVU Johnson. He went to school at NVU Johnson, so we had a lot of battles in the driveway when we were growing up. He's not in coaching, but I still say he should get into coaching. I think he'd be good at it.
So what kind of older brother were you? Were you one that took him under your wing and you're just kind of nice and propped him up, or were you one that just beat him down and reminded him that he was a younger brother?
I think there was a good balance of both. I definitely am competitive, and he'll definitely tell you I had to try to win at everything. And I still am that way, although he's been kicking my butt in cornhole lately. But no, I definitely am competitive, but so is he, and he's very competitive as well.
And Bryan, for you, and I just want to bring up the tragedy of you losing your father. Just talk a little bit about where you got that intestinal fortitude, that drive, that grit, just to keep going when life happens and kind of throws you curveballs along the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up, I had a younger brother. And to be honest, these guys know probably more than most how competitive I am when it comes to sports and the hatred to lose. So I was not one to coddle my brother growing up. I was one to kind of, beat him down a little bit and tell him he's my younger brother, and that's where the follow goes through. But when I got kind of punched in the mouth when my dad passed away, the grit really came from my mom. She was a sports competitor growing up. She played field hockey. They actually ended up being co-state champions her senior year. And, she really instilled a lot of the grit and the push through any type of adversity that you go through. And when I lost my dad, the biggest piece is, I'm the oldest. I'm kind of the caregiver of the family now, and making sure that everybody's okay. So it's weird how those roles kind of switch when you're a kid. You're so competitive and just worried about the sports game. But then when life hits you in the face, you just kind of change that mindset and really look out for those that are really close to you that you may have not done that before. And now that's kind of where I'm at with my coaching too. Is we talk a lot about when I'm coaching AAU about when we get hit with adversity. It's what do you do when you hit adversity? You have to come together. And that's kind of what I learned when my dad passed away. Was I had to come together with the people that are as close to me, like Pat, Bink, Rob Key, my mother, and then my brother and the rest of my family. I mean, that's really the biggest piece that I learned from that aspect. Was when you hit adversity, the worst thing you can do is run from it. You really got to come together and try to push through it.
Yeah, it's good. Real life. And Unity Lions is the program that Bryan coaches. And so, Binky, where did you get that nickname?
As a young kid, I guess this is supposed to be a secret, but I guess I can put it out there. My family used to always say, I guess I used to do tricks with my pacifier, which is also known as a Binky. And I guess no one else could do the tricks and stuff like that. So they gave me that name, Binky. Yeah.
So, Greg, I want to ask you this. When you first got on the court at Johnson and you saw Bryan and Patrick, did you show up saying, like, who are these bums? I'm just going to own this gym? Was there just a mutual respect? Did you know them before? You could be honest. It's just us. It's just us. What do you think when you saw your teammates at Johnson?
When I first came out here, I was kind of, I don't know. I'm a humble guy, as you see. That's why I go by that. But I'm very hungry. I'm a competitor. I like to compete. So I kind of came out. I saw Bryan, and I was like, "Whoa, that kid can jump!" And then when I first came out, I didn't really see Pat because me and Pat, we played in that summer league. Well, we were supposed to play in the summer down at Rutgers, but then Pat was injured, so he didn't get to play. So I didn't get to see Pat play until he came back and we started working out together. And one thing about Pat, like we always say, he was the most fundamental player I ever been around. Like the fundamentals were all there. He actually worked on my shot with me that summer when he was coming back. So like, I don't think I ever really thought of anyone as a bum. I was very humble. The talent level was different than what I was used to seeing, but it wasn't. Yeah, I'm a humble guy.
So Patrick, are you the son of a coach? Is that right? Your dad coached as well. Is that where the fundamentals came, or did he kind of let you do what you did and he would do what he did?
Well, I can give some credit to my dad, but I gotta say, as far as the playing experience and the coaching background before him, was definitely my mom. I've definitely spent a lot of time with the fundamentals with me as well, but definitely as I got older, my dad was a large part of that as well.
Now, I say this with all due respect, but Patrick, when you saw Greg and Andy, did you think, man, I could post these guys up? Or what were you thinking when you saw them? Was it just like, because I know guard play, there's a sense of competition. I used to be like the fourth option. Now I'm like the inbounder, and maybe they'll let me set a screen. But that competition, what were you thinking? Fighting for position, everybody wants to play. What were your thoughts when you saw your teammates?
Well, I definitely don't have the athleticism compared to either of those two. So it's good that Bink thought I was fundamentally sound, because I had to really use my mind to make sure I made up for that lack of athleticism that a lot of players have. But I think as far as competitive piece, I mean, I think all of us could probably say that we wanted to, make sure we could be the best that we could be ourselves. But also, I think what Osborne was able to do was really foster a culture that we love, togetherness and a family. And so despite how competitive, it made for really competitive practices, but it ultimately made us better individually as well. So I have tremendous respect for Coach Osborne.
So Pat, how tall are you?
6 foot, right on the dot.
All right. So coming from Danville, Division IV Vermont, playing at Johnson State, sometimes us that went to smaller schools, we kind of get like a wink and a giggle as somebody looks over their shoulder at us. Did you feel like you had that monkey on your back, that you had to prove yourself coming from Danville and playing at Johnson with these guys?
I mean, there's definitely some of that at times, but not from these two or anything. But you definitely have that, that notion of Division IV. But I feel like Division IV in Vermont is a little bit different than maybe Division IV in a lot of other states in terms of just the levels of play. I think the bottom line is, if you're playing in college, no matter what division you were playing at, I mean, you had to have been doing something right. And I look back fondly on my years in Division IV at Danville, had a great experience, played for a tremendous high school coach in Jim Nelson. Was also very close friends with Coach Osborne, and that's kind of how I got connected with Johnson in the first place. But no, there's definitely that notion, but I always enjoy kind of offering my insight from being a Division IV player.
So Patrick, it's come up a couple times of different injuries you've had. So I want to ask this first to you. How important was it for you to have teammates really looking out for you when you were just bummed out, even depressed possibly, of not being able to play?
Well, it's interesting that you started off with the depressed piece. I mean, especially Bryan and Bink and Josh, who was mentioned earlier, those three guys I leaned on a lot during that time, just because I'm so used to being an active person. But I think about it a lot, my own experience with the ACL injury, and I actually blew out my knee a couple months ago, the same knee. So I'm actually coming back from a torn meniscus right now. But I think a lot about the players I coach now, and about when they're dealing with injuries, but just the mental health side of things, because as you mentioned, that's huge. And when you're kind of isolated or not doing things that you're normally doing, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by great teammates and a coach that really took the time, even though I wasn't contributing in normal ways, to make sure that I was okay. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, it's really good. And Bryan, for you, man, listening into your halftime speeches or timeouts, you're like the motivational, inspirational speaker. Like, you need to get a side gig doing all that. But it really connects with your players and these young minds to know that they don't have to do it all, that all the pressure is not on them, but it really is that family that coaches talk about so much. Why is that so important for you? And does that just come naturally out of who you are to motivate guys and let them know that they are interconnected?
So, I mean, a lot of it has to go to even back in my playing days. I mean, these guys know when I was on the bus, I didn't really necessarily, talk a lot on the bus or talk a lot in the locker room. I always kind of had my headphones in, listening to what they probably thought was music, but it really wasn't music. It was a lot of motivational videos by Les Brown, Inky Johnson, Eric Thomas, all these big motivational speakers on YouTube that have really molded my mind and my ability to be able to just push through adversity. And then I ended up tearing my knee when I returned home after college, and that's when I actually got into coaching. Was I tore my knee. I was kind of helping out Miles at Johnson for a little bit to try to recruit a kid at Spalding. Ended up going to Spalding to watch the kid play, and ended up at the end of the day talking to the head coach and seeing if I could help out the program and build some connections with the kids. And I just realized how much I loved being able to talk to kids and give them my insight on how to not just handle the game of basketball, but to also see how basketball relates to your own life, and how you can take it off the floor. And the adversity that you reach on the floor is just a small, minute piece that can bother you a lot. But then when you get hit in the mouth in real life, you can use what you learn to get through adversity in basketball to be able to get through that life adversity. And that's really what I preach a lot of during practices. And same thing, I reached out to Pat this past year. We were at the auditorium watching some college basketball, and I saw Pat. Pat said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he asked me what I was doing this past year and for coaching. And he had 80-year players with you. And, just that 2 hours with those kids, I just felt a bond that, I don't get a lot. And Pat asked me to come on board, and I ended up coaching at LI last year for a little while and plan on coaching this year as well. So, the bond I have with these two guys and a bunch of other guys that I met through Johnson and through the game of basketball, I can't thank everybody enough for the influence that they've had on my life and how I can hopefully influence the younger kids that are playing the game to use those little tools from basketball into their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, that's real good. And so I've seen Bryan a little bit. I've played pickup with Bryan, and I get yelled at. He's like KG, and I'm like big baby just crying in the corner. But so I'm going to start with you, Bryan, and then we'll go to Greg and finish with Patrick. And that's simply, when you played at a high level and then you're coaching young kids that play like young kids, and they don't either have the talent, the work ethic, or the desire to reach the next level, Bryan, how do you kind of soften your voice or really get to the kids to know that you love them, but they can achieve maybe at the level, not at the level you have, but just get to that next point?
So first, I want to say that I did watch.
Apologize to me. You want to apologize to me?
I do.
Accepted.
I want to apologize to a lot of my teammates. I'm sure a lot of my teammates didn't like some of the things that came out of my mouth at first. But really, it came from a place that, I tell a lot of my players now, I'm an intense guy. I'm emotional. I'm very passionate about the game. And all I want them to do is just to empty the tank. If you empty the tank every day and you can look in the mirror and tell yourself that you emptied the tank, I'm going to be happy with you. That's the biggest piece. And before I go into that, I do want to thank Mike Osborne for shouting me out in the last interview that he had and relating me to Kevin Garnett. That he was my idol growing up, and for him to say that, it really meant a lot to me. So I just needed to put that out there and tell thanks to Mike, because he not only changed my life, but also that piece just really solidified my playing experience. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, Ozzy's a great guy. And what we were talking about in that interview, if you missed, about how can you coach players that don't have the love of the game? And I mentioned that you and Bobby, Bob Shed, you guys just love to play. And so, Greg, for you, how do you coach kids that they more like to be on a team or with their friends when you really have X's and O's and stuff that you want them to do?
With me, I really speak a lot from my experience from when I played and how, I expected a lot from my teammates. I wanted everyone to be in the gym as much as I was in the gym, because that's how I am. I like to be in the gym. So I offer all the opportunities in the world to allow my team, my players to get into the gym. I give them every opportunity. There's never a time where you can hear where a player will ask me and I say no. And I tell my players that I know that I'm at times difficult to play for because I am very like emotional. I get into it. But they also understand that I'm a different person when we're inside those lines than when we're outside. So if I'm on you in practice and I'm getting on you in the game, and as soon as we leave that game and leave that practice, I'm your friend again. Like I never hold grudges. I never take anything personal. I don't think kids purposely not try or not get better. I know it's always something in between. So I try to give them the benefit. I know when I first started coaching, I was a stickler. Now I kind of pulled back a little bit as I got more years under my belt and got some more experience. But yeah, I just tell them like your teammates, like we didn't always like each other. We went at it in practice at times, and times where we probably wanted to fight each other in practice. But when we left the gym, we went to the cafeteria together. We went to the room and played 2K, where we got into more arguments there. But at the end of the day, we knew that we were a family and we always were going to be together. We're going to be here for one another. And no one else can go at my brothers the way I can go at them. We can go at each other, but if someone else was to try to go at them, then we're going to turn and be like, no, we're going to go at you. So it's like, it was that bond. You got to build that bond where we can compete, we can fight, but at the end of the day, we know that we're always together.
And so, Greg, I want to ask you too about coaching girls, and that's where I coach as well with Harwood. And it's probably a gross generalization, but it seems like if guys are having a practice and they get into it, there may be a punch or something inappropriate, of course, but just thrown and done. But then it seems like the next day everything's better. But with a girl, if something's said, again, probably a generalization, it seems it can drag on in the locker room. How have you had to adjust your coaching style to that of coaching the girls program up at Lamoille?
I would say more so I don't change what I do. I change how I say it and how I go about it. But like far as like what I do, I would do the same thing. I try and call the stuff out right then and there to try not let it drag on. I try to get right to the point. This is what's going on. I noticed this going on. We got to fix this and get this over with, because at the end of the day, we're all one team going for one goal and we're all together. So I, just like I would do with the boys, I would call it out right then and there. Some of the terminology and words I would use may be different for the ladies than the males, but far as how I go about it, I try to use the same approach, as they're all athletes and it's the same game. Nothing is that much different from girls and boys basketball. So I try to use the same approaches, just with different ways of saying things.
No, that's really good. And Patrick, for you, you guys have had some good athletes come through Linden, and I just think of Lau. I think it was Jimmy Lau. He had the best name too, but that kid could shoot, and his brother was good as well.
Jackie,
When you have a program, that's down a little bit, and you really have the goal of building them up, how do you not get discouraged, and how do you not push them too quick to achieve what simply takes time?
Yeah, I think it's we really harp on growth a lot, and growth is not necessarily always apparent. It can be smaller things, just understanding and getting kind of the process right, really focusing on being together and getting guys into the gym. You've mentioned Jimmy's actually a great friend of mine, and of course I had the chance to be an assistant coach when Jackie played for LI as well. So those are some of the better LI basketball players I've been through the program in recent years. But I think, just seeing from our first year to the second year, it may not seem like a big turnaround in terms of growth, but there was definitely great signs of it. Especially ending our season this year, we ended on winning 10 of our last 14 games after a tough start, and really spoke to the resiliency of our group, but also the time that they really put in last summer to really put themselves in a better position. So I've noticed that I think with culture, it takes, I think research says it takes a good 2 to 3 years at least to kind of start seeing those changes that you're hoping for. So I've started to see small signs of that, and very encouraged by all the work that the players have put forth to create that culture.
So Patrick, I got to make fun of you for a second. You said fourth, put forth. Are you a pastor? I mean, I thought only we talk like that, put forth. But that so Patrick, I'll stay right with you with AAU, with Summer League. There's so many question marks, and I do know or feel as though in Vermont, it's great having athletes play multiple sports. They work different muscles. They have different roles on different teams. How do you think not having AAU Summer League is going to impact your season, hopefully, which will be allowed to play this winter?
That's a great question. I think if you're in a program like Bink or Bryan runs, I think that they do a tremendous job, and I know others do as well, but they do a tremendous job at making sure the skill development is there. They're making sure that, they're coaching. I think there's certain situations where that may not always be the case. You might have somebody that's kind of just doing it for the wrong reasons. I know these two do it for the right reasons, and I used to also coach AAU and had the same philosophy as I know they both do. But I think what will be unfortunate about kind of the times that we're in, but understandable, is that decision-making piece that you don't get for players right now with the 5-on-5 setting. Skill development is great, and like right now we're able to do certain things in a 1-on-0 type of setting, fundamentals and skill work. But I think a huge advantage is when you can start playing more game-like and small-sided games and being able to really focus on that decision piece, because you can have all the skills, but you got to be able to make the right read and decision to utilize the correct skill. So I think that's the biggest thing that I could see as far as it relates to preparing for the season ahead.
Yeah, I think especially with younger players for AAU, we need to teach kids how to play the game before we teach them plays of the game. And just getting open runs allows them to do that. But Greg, for you, with Lamoille, some transition taking place with the AAU, we've always seen you at different tournaments. How do you think that's going to impact the team this year?
I think it's tough, because I think a lot of our girls and just players in general in Lamoille County, they use that spring season, especially some of them who just got their feet wet on the varsity level. They use that spring season to really build confidence and honed in some skills, as Pat was saying, and really work on that decision making and the pace of the game. I think and a lot of them could have used that this spring. But I think for the most part, my biggest worry was we got a lot of one sport athletes on the girl side. Not a lot, but a bunch, and they're not doing anything. So with not doing anything and not being able to be in the gym and stuff like that, they're not really getting that conditioning in and all that stuff. So like, I think that's where I think it's going to hit a lot of us, where like usually we use that first week or so, you do a little conditioning, then you got to get ready to plays, because then we got those scrimmages that's coming up and stuff like that. But I think we're going to see that we're going to be hit with a lot of, putting more into conditioning, which makes me worried because of injuries. And when you're out of shape and stuff like that, that's when most of the injuries happen and all of that. So that's kind of my worry. How can I find a way to get everything going, at least on the side of getting in shape, strengthening those muscles again and all that, to make sure we're not putting anyone at risk of injury and anything like that.
Yeah. Hey, Bryan, I need you to be honest for a moment. Not that you aren't, but be honest right now. Who was a better basketball player, yourself or Patrick?
Pat, man, I'm sorry.
You need to answer that truthfully.
And I can tell you right now that I was a better basketball player, but Pat is definitely the better coach. But that's the biggest piece. I'll never forget my junior year. We were at NEC, and he came up to me after the game, and he said, you had a pretty good game tonight. You played really, really well. I mean, you let the game come to you. And it was like the first time I really realized that Pat, even though he wasn't playing a ton at that time, he was thinking the game at all moments. And that helped me become a better player. So honestly, without Pat, I wouldn't be the player that I am today, or the coach I am today.
So here's my follow-up question, Bryan. you're the better basketball player. He's the head coach. Were there times in this season where you disagreed with what he was doing? And how did you become a good assistant where sometimes I get too loud and too vocal? Talk about being an assistant coach that's a better player than the head coach, but maybe doesn't know the X's and O's as well.
The best part about my and Pat's relationship is that really, even if I did disagree with maybe an X's and O's call, my role on the bench wasn't necessarily to make those calls. That's his call. He's the head coach. My role that I started to fit into midway through the year was really motivating kids and being able to, keep their emotions under control. He could focus on the game, while if a kid was getting emotional on the floor, I've done a lot of personal development on how to control my own emotions in the game. Because as these boys know, I really wear my emotions on my sleeve, and sometimes the top popped off and it didn't go well. So I really could learn, how to manage my emotions on the floor when things weren't going my way. And Pat really trusted in me to have those conversations with those kids when we had some emotional pop-offs, and to be able to kind of calm them down, to be able to get them back into the game in a good mind state, or mindset. So that was really, I felt like that was really where my role was, and I took it on and kept rolling.
So Patrick, talk a little bit about having one of your friends be an assistant coach. Everybody thinks like, oh, I want to be roommates with my friends. I want to like spend so much time together. But it's been said about this bubble in the NBA, if it does work out, that people are going to get so sick of each other. As a coach, where do you have a conversation and say, hey, I love you, but this is the line? How did that process take place?
Yeah, I mean, from the start, usually I try to make sure that I'm ahead of the season. We're talking and all the time, and we'll have a meeting ahead of time to kind of lay out kind of the initial plan. Obviously, that's always adjusting and going as through the season. But the thing that I appreciate and what I wanted from Bryan, I knew he would deliver on, is the fact I don't want to just say yes type of assistant coach, somebody who's going to agree with me on everything. I needed somebody that. And now, I'm not saying that he disagreed on everything, but I like hearing what he has to say and taking that into account before I make a decision. And there's several times throughout the year that he'd offer something that was valuable for us and for individuals, but also for the team, and we'd go with it. His energy, as we've talked about already, the boys really fed off of that, and it was nice. They developed a great rapport with him. We're really excited that he came to be a part of our program this year. But that's the thing I can count on with Bryan, is that he's going to tell me what he's thinking, and that's what I need. And that's no different than actually my father, who's also an assistant coach with us. He has some of the same philosophies that I have, but he also has some things that we differ on. But between both of them, it really gives me a lot to sit on and to really think about, what is best for our team. And that's what I try to make sure I get all the best information and make the best decisions based off of that.
Yeah, that's really good. And Greg, this question for you, not going into a lot of detail, but the first time our girls played your girls, you were an assistant coach. The second time we played, you were in the head coach's seat. Talked about how being an assistant prepared you to move those 18 inches over and have all the responsibility of the game just on your shoulders.
I think it was shocking when I first walked in and found out that I was going to be in that role. As soon as I walked in the door and didn't know, I was planning on getting on the bus as a unit. And then I got there and found out that wasn't happening. But I think it was fairly easy in the sense of I coached a lot of those girls already. Like I had most of that team was my JV team the year before. I've been with those girls since 7th grade, and the ones that weren't on my JV team, I coached them in AAU years before. So it was fairly easy transition far as knowing who is who, what they can do, and stuff like that. And I think what prepared me for it was at times being an assistant at the college level with Miles and being in situations where Miles would give me this group of guys and this is your team, and we'll go at it in practice and stuff like that. Having those opportunities to go to coach on my own as a head coach on JV or the practice kind of coaching practices and stuff like that. I think that helped me prepare for those moments of when the opportunity presents itself. You got to step up, and I'm always ready in the sense of, as a player, it was always next man up. Someone went down, it was the next man up. So I kind of think of that as a coach too. You're assistant coach, but the coach gets sick, something happened, it's next man up. Someone has to step up because it keeps going. Time doesn't stop. We still had to get on that bus and we still had to go down there. It was nothing that we really could do in that situation.
Well, guys, thank you so much for making the time. I have a couple quick hitters that hopefully will be fun or draw some amusement, smiles out of you guys, and then we'll get you out. But if the game's on the line, you are down by two. Who do you want shooting the ball?
I'll give Hickey the mid-range.
Patrick?
I'm going with Hickey on that.
I'm taking that shot.
So what if you want to win? You guys want to go to overtime? That's what you're telling me?
Well,
Bryan won't miss?
I'm still hitting that 3.
The mid-range, I'm giving to Hickey. If it's a 3, to be honest, I'm probably taking it.
What about the one?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. When you guys were on the floor, how long did it take you to get I assume, and this is probably bad on my part because I know, Bryan, you're more of a swing than a big, but to get that chemistry with a big or just playing that pick and roll game or pick and lob or whatever you did with Bryan, did it take a while or was it just nice having somebody that could jump? Greg?
Can I say something? So
yeah,
I think we connected. So we did an intramural league my freshman year. And for some reason, I had a team full of bigs. I had Bryan Hickey, I had Billy Boyd, I had Ryan Tatro. Like, it was just me and all these bigs. And we were beating teams fairly bad. Like, I was having like 20 assists with just Hickey and Billy alone. And I think that's when it was just like, it was instant chemistry there. Like, it was just like this guy can jump. So he's catching all these oops. And mind you, it's intramural. But like, he's catching all these oops, and then like he can hit the mid-range too, so he can pick and pop. So it was hard to really defend the pick and roll in that sense. And I think Pat and I we bonded more off season because we didn't really get to play together on the court, but off season like when I stayed in the summer, going out to his house in Danville, we're on the court, we're working out. Like, we put in a lot of hours in the gym together, and that's where I think we bonded more off the court. Which I bonded with Hickey as well off the court, but the chemistry came.
Yeah, so Patrick, talk to me a little bit about the chemistry, but also understanding different roles that you had to have, but that players have to have on a certain team.
Yeah, I think chemistry is huge. And I think back, I had the opportunity to work for Coach Clifford down with the Charlotte Hornets. He's now with Orlando Magic now, but I'm just learning some things in that whole year related to chemistry, and understanding your roles and just being able to, as a coach, being able to clearly communicate what those roles are and defining them, but also leaving that room where they can grow, as we were talking about earlier, so that their role can expand. And if they're going about it the right way and trying to make sure that they're getting better, those roles can expand over time. And a lot of that is about the habits and about what they're doing and with the time that they have during the off season. And that says a lot about what their role will be come winter time. But for them to understand that that's a changing process. And I think I had a pretty good sense of that as a player. I think at Johnson, I knew what my strengths were, and I certainly knew what my weaknesses were. So I think if the more the coach can communicate that, I think that's something that Coach Osborne did really well with all of us. Always brought us in for individual meetings, always let us know in front of the team too what our role was. So it really added to all of us being on the same page and making sure that we were putting team first.
So, Bryan, I say this to keep you humble. So you aren't the best player I've ever played with, but you're certainly one of the better players. How did you fight that temptation, or maybe you didn't with your teammates, but to say, just give me the ball and get out of the way? How did you learn to trust your teammates?
Well, a lot of my off seasons, while these guys were working out in Danville and in Vermont, I really traveled a lot. I traveled down to Manchester, New Hampshire, and played in a pro-am my junior year. I traveled down to Connecticut a lot, where Rob Key lives, and played at the park. So how my off seasons really, I was playing against a lot better players than I was. And when I would come into the gym, I knew these guys were working on their game. So it wasn't like they were just going home and eating chips on the couch. They're working on their game too. So whenever I had Bink, when we would go to the mall or do anything off the floor, I would always introduce him as my point guard, because the guy was always working on his game. So with me, same thing with coaching. I don't care if you're the number 1 player or the 13th player. I'm going to treat you the exact same way. I'm going to push you hard, and I hope that you end up, really pursuing that goal of whatever your goal is in the game of basketball, and then ultimately accepting your role. So I learned a lot being a captain at Johnson for 2 years, and learning about the game and learning about how to deal with different types of personalities and different players. I learned a lot about that in college, because you end up playing with a bunch of people from all over the place.
Yeah, that's so good. And there's nothing wrong with a good plate of nachos. I just want to throw that out there. I don't mind me some nacho chips once in a while. Hey, so who was your favorite player growing up, Greg?
Growing up, it would have to be Allen Iverson.
Patrick?
I'm going a little bit further back than I didn't get to watch a lot of him, but because I was pretty young, but I still am a John Stockton fan.
All right, Bryan?
It's definitely Kevin Garnett, hands down.
And what about your favorite college team, Bryan Hickey?
Oh, Duke. Coach K, I've read his book a few times, and I just...
Mute Bryan. Somebody mute Bryan right now.
Please do.
Patrick, what about you? Who did you like to watch?
You're going to know. I actually have the same answer.
All right, Greg, we'll just get right to Greg. College. Who'd you like? There you go, the Orange. Now, what about the NBA? Were you guys a big, I know it's the Sixers probably for you, Greg, but was it all Celtics, or who did you like growing up? Let's start with you, Patrick.
Celtics all the way. Went to so many games growing up.
Gregory?
The Knicks.
Why'd you like the Knicks?
I like Latrell Sprewell, Stephon Marbury, but I also was a Carmelo Anthony fan. That's why I like Syracuse as well. And I watched him in high school at St. Anthony. So that was like my guy.
All right, Bryan?
Definitely Celtics. Big Boston fan.
And so the last question, I'll get you guys out on this. The evolution of the three-point line, I think it's a great equalizer, or I did a few years ago when I could actually get up and down the floor. You guys coach as well as play. I was told that I'm a better coach than I am a player, because I love to shoot threes, but I hate when my team does, because I'm coaching JV girls, and sometimes they don't have the strength of the form to do that. Where do you fall in that? Greg, I'll start with you.
I can't tell you my secrets. No, I'm just playing. You ask any of my players, you're open, shoot the ball. That's how I am. If you're open, shoot the ball. If you don't, I'm going to be really upset.
What about these 23, 27 footers that some high schoolers are taking now from watching Steph and Dame and these players? Do you like that? Is that good for the game?
I won't say it's good or bad, because like I tell players all the time, they're taking those shots, but they also can make them. Yeah. They work on those shots. If you're not working, I tell players all the time, if you don't work on this shot in an off season or in practice or anything like that, then you shouldn't take it in the game. I know for sure you work on a catch and shoot three in practice, because I put that within my practice. But the 50 footers and all that, if you're not working on it, then I don't expect you to take it.
Yeah. What about you, Patrick?
Yeah, I kind of go along. I have some players that like to joke around about it, and like they want to try to get a reaction out of me during an open gym or something like that, maybe once in a while. But they also know that when it comes to the season, I'm pretty honest with them about what their strengths are. Now, if I have somebody who can demonstrate that they can consistently in practice hit that shot in competition or even in just standalone shooting drills about 70% of the time, I kind of go with that's kind of an NBA unwritten rule in workouts, is if you can hit that 70% of the time, that's a good shot for you, knowing that there'll be game slippage, but that percentage will be more around 40%. So I think kind of, once again, that goes back to our conversation about roles and what's the best way you can help our team. So that's helped with that, even though the boys get a good chuckle once in a while out of talking about that.
You got to bring back the Lau brothers. Let them shoot.
Yes,
Shoot.
definitely.
Bryan, as a coach, do you coach different than how you like to play?
No. I like to run up and down the floor. I like to go at it, but it really comes down to your personnel. I mean, it all depends upon who you have for players. And if your players can run up and down the floor, like a lot of teams, at least that I've coached, we don't have a 6'6" kid. I'm always the tallest guy on the bench. So it's one of those things where if we can outrun teams and stay in conditioned and get up and down the floor and get as many shots up as we can, that sets us up for success. But I mean, you give me a 6'7" kid that's 220, then yeah, we'll slow the game down. But that's kind of how I like to play the game too, is run up and down the floor, really, really use my mobility to be able to be successful. And with the 30-footers and the 40-footers and all those, I mean, it all depends upon if that's within your personnel and in your set. If you've got a guy that can hit that shot, then go ahead, take it. But like I've said before, and these guys have said too, if you're not working on that shot and you're not hitting it consistently, then you shouldn't be taking it in a game. And especially if you're not strong enough. If you're not strong enough to hit that shot, there's no reason. It'll really mess up your shot form in the long run, where I've got a few kids right now that I'm working with because they took threes when they were in 3rd and 4th grade. Their shot form just isn't where it should be. And they've started to recognize that the more we've worked together.
So true, no doubt. I'll be you guys' water boy as long as you guys win. That's all I care about. So all you got to do is win. These guys played at Northern Vermont, Johnson State. They are Badgers. They are teammates and brothers for life. So, guys, thanks so much for jumping on and being a part. I trust you enjoyed it. I did. I love hearing the stories, and I love what sports does to bring that common bond to greater community for all of us. So, Bryan, Greg, Patrick, thanks again for being a part.
Thank you,
Jeff.
And my name is Jeff Fuller. You can find all these interviews, Jay Fuller Interviews, on YouTube, Facebook group, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be back with more coming up shortly, but tune in and subscribe to this YouTube channel, Jay Fuller Interviews.